Hi everyone, it's me, Tim. Today I want to talk about converting like a movie or TV show into a game. I'm going to use an example. This is to answer a question from Andrew Williams ZN4NP, who asked, here's a question idea. Have you ever watched a movie or show and thought, that would make a fun game? If so, what movie or show would you do? That's a good question. And also, Andrew, I apologize. You asked that a while ago. I'm really behind on making video responses to questions because of work and also because I've been answering a lot of questions just in the comment sections. But I write down all the ones that I eventually want to get to, and I wrote down yours because I wanted to think about it. And recently, I watched a movie that isn't really a sequel. It just takes place in the same universe, and it reminded me of the movie A Quiet Place, because what I watched recently was A Quiet Place Day One. And I remember even watching the first movie going, this would be an interesting game. And Day One just reminded me of that, and then reminded me of your question. And so I sat down and I'm like, okay, let's do a thought experiment. Let's say someone said, hey, let's convert Quiet Place into a game. What would I do? First of all, you have to establish its setting and what's unique about it. They're really OP aliens. They are really powerful. They can kill humans with a single swipe. They take out the army. They take out tanks. They're really, really, really hard to kill, with one exception, which I'll get to. And noise attracts them. Even the quietest noise can attract them. Breathing can attract them. So that's kind of the setting, and that's what makes this an interesting setting to then go about and say, okay, we'd have to come up with a story and then a bunch of system mechanics. First off, I would say, if I was going to make a game in this, I would make combat heavily, heavily discouraged. If you think this is a combat game, I think you're going to be very disappointed because you will die, and you will die frequently. I think even Dark Souls players will be like, there's too much dying in this. Because combat is not the point. It shouldn't be the point. If you do combat too much, if you kill aliens too frequently and especially too easily, it will lose the whole point of the setting of this movie/game. Now game. Instead, this should be marketed as a survival game. You need food. You need water. You need medicine. You need a place to sleep that's relatively safe, because when you're asleep, you may not be able to control the noise you make. You might snore. You might roll over. This is just super, super important. So the whole game is just about survival. The secondary thing to that, what your survival depends on, is being quiet. You have to walk very quietly. You have to move quietly, which means not only paying attention to what shoes and clothing you're wearing, but to the surface details of what you're walking over, and things like opening a door, opening a cabinet, opening any kind of container, even opening like a bottle of pills or a can of beans. That may make too much noise. So these are the kind of things you have to think about. Now, part of that is, like I mentioned, like opening a container or opening a can of beans. Basically, using items will make noise, which is why combat should be so heavily discouraged, because almost anything that it would take to hurt, much less kill one of these aliens, is going to be very loud. Shooting a gun will bring every alien within a mile to your location. I think it's just, not something you're going to do. So one of the things I would do as a designer is I would define sound levels, and I would try to make it relatively coarse so that it's easy for the player to understand. Now keep in mind, I'm spitballing all of this design. Literally, Andrew asked this question. I've been thinking about it for a while. I wrote down everything just a few minutes before I'm filming this. This is something I've been noodling, but all these ideas are literally within the last 15 minutes. So I would define everything in the game as having a sound level associated with it. Basically, every action the player takes has a sound level that's associated with what they're doing, and either what surface they're doing it on, or what object they're doing it to or with. Silent is absolutely safe to do. This action takes no noise whatsoever. This is rare. There are very few actions the player can do that is absolutely silent. Then there's quiet. Quiet means nearby aliens would be alerted. And I'll talk about later what nearby means. Average sound, well, remember these aliens are super sound sensitive. So an average sound, dropping a book, opening a squeaky door, or something like that. Every alien that's on the map you're on will be alerted and will converge at your location. And then the fourth level of sound I'd make is loud. That's like shooting a gun, screaming, anything like that. Knocking over a display of canned goods, breaking glass. These are loud. Loud sounds alert every alien on the map, just like an average sound does, but also new ones will start spawning in at the edge of the map and converging at your location to represent aliens streaming in from outside the area you're on. Now, I'm talking about maps. Maybe this is an open world, and then you have to, when I say map, I mean a certain region and then outside that. But I was thinking of this in terms of you go from map to map doing exploring. Now, one thing that happened in the movies that I think would be really, really important for the game is to use environmental sound as cover. They demonstrate this a lot where they talk near a waterfall or a fountain, or in one of them they would use car alarms as distractions, or they noticed that lightning, could be used as a cover. Because some environmental sounds are attacked by aliens, like the car alarms or objects falling over, but some are ignored. They don't seem to care about trees, even though when things are absolutely quiet, trees make a lot of noise. Those leaves rustle all the time, and I don't recall ever seeing them attacking trees. Also, flowing water, fountains, creeks, and the ocean, waterfalls. I never saw them attacking that. So that's obviously something they ignore. And that leads us to a really important disadvantage that the aliens have. They cannot swim. They will wade into shallow water with reluctance. You see them doing that in a few of them, in a couple of movies. But they will never voluntarily go underwater. And when they do, they drown very easily. It's almost like they either don't know how to hold their breath or they can't hold their breath, but they drown within seconds of going underwater. So this is something you can, of course, take into advantage as a player if you're playing a game. But I just want to say before I start talking about my system mechanic ideas, I would not necessarily make this into an RPG. I think an adventure game, a narrative adventure makes more sense. A survival game makes more sense. An action RPG, no. Anything that encourages you to fight the aliens and to kill them, I think would ruin the whole point of this setting, which is you cannot really go against these aliens in combat. So how would I design the mechanics for this game? There are a lot of choices, so I just went with a few. Let's assume you can, at character creation, you have to make a few basic attributes. You're given some points to make some basic attributes. I think strength should be one of them, for opening things and breaking into stuff. Maybe part of a parkour skill, and I'll talk about skills. Dexterity, definitely. It controls movement, it controls parkour. And I think strength and dex could both control parkour. Maybe they factor into the skill, or maybe they factor into different attributes of the skill, like how well you move is dex, but how far you can jump or pulling yourself up, the height, you can pull yourself up is maybe a strength thing. You'd have an endurance stat, I think, and that would control your health, but also the amount of time you can spend running before you have to stop. You'd have like a sprint gauge. Maybe perception for spotting aliens, just knowing how the aliens that are nearby you, maybe the radius goes up as your perception. Maybe spotting other things, finding, it would highlight things in the environment that you notice. And I think that's it. I don't think I do intelligence. I don't think there's going to be a lot of dialogue in this game. So I don't think intelligence, charisma, anything like that is needed. I think there are a lot of skills you could do, but probably not the skills you're used to. I don't think there should just be stealth. Stealth should be broken down. How good are you at standing quietly? How good are you at walking quietly? How good are you at running quietly? Parkour would be in there. Maybe elements of parkour like jump distance, jump height, parkour speed, or maybe it's just a parkour skill and then those other ones are attributes that improve with the skill adjusted by your attributes. Maybe there's crafting in there. Crafting could be used to make better equipment, to alter the properties of your equipment, to make basic first aid medicine, to wherever you sleep. I hesitate to call it a base enhancement, and I'll talk about that. Then as you level up, I think there are perks you can buy. A lot of perks could be things about just reducing sound of basic things, like when you can reduce the sound of item use. Not things you craft. Like crafting would be used to like make a quieter pair of shoes. But perks could be used for like when I open a door, it makes less noise. And that reduction could be in a number of different axes. You could say it reduces the radius the noise makes. It could reduce the chance of alerting anything in that radius, or maybe it reduces the number of things. Maybe like one level of perk says one less thing is alerted. So if there's only one thing nearby, you know it's safe to open that door because you won't alert it. If there are two things, you're going to alert one of them. And then flaws. I think flaws could be an interesting part of this game as well. I mentioned snoring. If you take the snoring flaw, that means you can't really safely sleep anywhere unless there's environmental sound cover. You could only sleep near a fountain or at the beach or something like that. Now, maybe a difference between this game and the Outer Worlds would be the flaws are picked when you start. And then the difficulty of the game could be adjusted by the player. You can take a few flaws. I'd probably limit it. You're not going to take 10 flaws, but maybe you can take 1 to 3 flaws. And the more you take, the harder the game is. But the more points you get to spend on basic attributes, which are otherwise unchangeable after the game starts. So it's a reason to pick a flaw, but maybe you don't want to pick a flaw. And I think that's an interesting way of making difficulty a player decision during character creation rather than a slider in some option menu somewhere that doesn't seem to make sense. I talked about base enhancement. I hesitate to say that you do base building, but I think that most players want to have some place to keep their stuff, keep it safe. Maybe they have water defenses. Maybe they build a trench around where they are that's filled with water that's maybe wider than the aliens can jump. Maybe they can build sound cover. Maybe you can build a fountain. Maybe you can divert a creek to flow by your base or flow over rocks and make sound cover. Maybe you can string wire or string to make alarms. So if an alien gets nearby, it trips over something and makes sound, and you hear it, and all the other aliens attract to where the alien is, away from you. Maybe you can soundproof areas. Maybe you can soundproof a room in your house, so that's where you can sleep and eat, and basically it turns all quiet noises into silent noises, so you can safely do some things in there. Now, that's roughly all my idea. But I want to tell you that if I was doing this in real life, either as an indie or if I was at a company that was tasked with this, I would be having brainstorming meetings about this. Brainstorming meetings about what movie or TV shows people thought would make a great game. Once we had picked a few, how we would turn that into a game. This is the time to get a collective group of imaginative people together and talk about what you do. And again, in a constructive, positive way. People are too quick to go, yeah, it's not going to work. I always think about that if these people had been at Fallout brainstorming meeting, as soon as somebody said, let's do a post-apocalyptic game, they would have gone, Interplay already has Wasteland. That's a dumb idea. Move on. And no Fallout would have ever been made. So at this point, if I was doing this for real, I would have brainstorming meetings with positive, constructive, imaginative people from the team. And we would try to decide on a movie or show to turn into a game and how to turn it into a game. And then once we had enough of those, we'd pick one and do it. So Andrew Williams, I hope that answered your question. I hope the rest of you got a good idea of like how it works when you want to turn an existing non-game property into a game.